Why do you need to have Josh Downs and Josh Palmer on your roster? And what do you do with the Rams backfield going forward? We will break it down as we look at the Week 8 waiver wire as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast, where your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in your league. We're part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL, fantasy, and betting for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher at NFL Network and fantasy analyst for NFL.com.
All right, Michelle, we are now into week 8. Hard to believe. So halfway point of the fantasy football season. Today, we're going to look at the waiver wire and some interesting names, some last calls and some very good wide receivers, more injury attrition at running back. And then, of course, looking at our streamers that you want to look at there at quarterback, tight end, defense that can help you out. Now that there are no buys, we got every team back in action, 16 games here in week 8, but it also gives you a lot of options and things you may want to do with your roster or do some stashing here for later in the season. So we'll get into all that on today's show. Today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONFL, all caps, for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. That's Game Time. All right, Michelle, let's dive right in, and we're going to start with some wide receivers. And two of them are named Josh. Just happened to be they had big games here in week 7. We've been telling you about these guys as number 2s on their team, but now they're really entrenched as key targets, and they're making big plays all over the field. Josh Downs and Josh Palmer.
Josh Downs is getting it done. I mean, it was a guy I was hesitant to really go pick up too soon here because he wasn't getting a ton of yards on his receptions, right? But in this last game, you really saw that big play ability that he's able to make. And with Gardner Minshew, like, I think it's not going to be consistent. Don't get me wrong. Like, most wide receivers are not, unless you're one of the elite guys. But I do think Josh Downs is a really nice flex option from week to week. And he's going to have some more boom weeks as we go along. I think he's been a very impressive third round rookie this year. They get the Saints and then the Panthers, like a couple games that I'm happy to play him.
Yeah, and you also look at Josh Downs. I think he's a little bit Christian Kirk-like, I think, and that's great news for him because he gets the Saints. Saints really struggle with Christian Kirk. They have Alontae Taylor there. He's the weakest link of an otherwise pretty good secondary with Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo. So it's the guy that you're going to definitely play this week, and we'll talk about where he ranks here. But, yeah, you can plug and play him. He's right there with Michael Pittman. They've kind of made Alec Pierce third guy here. The tight ends are not much use, and Kyle Granson didn't even play last week. So all these developments help. And, of course, Minshew, he scored 2 consecutive games with Minshew as a starting quarterback. So that's really helped Josh Downs. It's kind of like when we had, remember, Minshew and DJ Chark connected right away when he started for the Jaguars. That's kind of what's happening here with Downs. Now with Palmer, he's doing what we expected. There's been no Quentin Johnston. He's the occasional big play threat in this offense. But otherwise, this offense, passing-wise, is going through 3 players not named Austin Eckler. Keenan Allen, we know, dominating the targets. Gerald Everett in a lot of situations, sometimes Donald Parham at tight end. And then Josh Palmer making the big plays all over the field. He did this last year. He was very productive when Allen and Mike Williams were hurt. Williams is hurt again. So I think it's the last call. You got to go get Josh Palmer now as a wide receiver 3 with some 2 upside, or he's going to be evaporated from the waiver wire.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice wide receiver 2 option for you week to week. He's shown he's been pretty safe with Mike Williams at a lineup, at least 7 targets in each of the last 4 games. And he's averaging a lot of yards per reception now too without Mike Williams. And so that's good to see. Palmer's just one of those safe guys with Justin Herbert. You know, he's going to get the targets. Will he get the touchdowns? Will he get the big plays? But I think Josh Downs and Josh Palmer are the 2 big guys to pick up this week. And also I was going to say, check for Tank Dell, He's been out with the concussion.
Yeah.
He may have been dropped. He's off the bye week. Josh Downs and Tank Dell are very similar players in my mind. And you have
Yeah.
CJ Stroud playing well. So check to see if Tank Dell is out there as well. And then another rookie wide receiver that we've been bringing up pretty much every week on the show, but typically he's in our second section, right? Just a guy to keep an eye out for or to stash. But now I think he's actually getting to the spot where he's playable, and it's Rashee Rice, rookie wide receiver for the Chiefs. They get a nice upcoming schedule. The Broncos, the Dolphins, they do have a bye, but after that, the Eagles. So it should be lots of scoring in these games. And he played a season high 40 snaps last week, saw the touchdown, got 60 yards. He seems to be Mahomes' top wide receiver option right now in his rookie season, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to be the key here is the Chiefs don't have it too easy, right? And you want Mahomes to be aggressively throwing against a team like he did against the Chargers. It was an interesting approach because the Chargers usually give it up against the run, and they were having a positive game script. But Mahomes is one of those guys they can just chuck off in the first half and get his volume there. So that's the key. The Chiefs need to be a little bit pushed. I think they felt it coming against the Chargers. Now the Chargers ultimately made too many mistakes to stay in the game. So that's the thing is you don't want them to totally just be this grindy team that plays good defense and you don't need a lot from Mahomes. That doesn't happen very often. But as long as Mahomes is getting volume, Rice is going to be involved behind Travis Kelce. And two players that might be out there with the injury there to Christian Watson, we'll see about that knee PCL thing that he's dealing with. Romeo Doubs could still be out there in some leagues. And Deontay Johnson, people may have forgotten him during his time on IR. He came back, played pretty well with George Pickens. Now let's move on to running back Michelle and this Rams backfield. You called it a little bit on Darrell Henderson. Now they actually put him back on the practice squad, which is weird. I think it's an indication they don't want to really pay the backup running backs that much here behind what you've seen with Kyren Williams and Ronnie Rivers. You have Royce Freeman. It was a split, but Henderson had the better production. That said, you have to go pick up one part of this backfield. It could easily change into a different direction at any point. I'm not loving, I should say, the matchup like I did last week against the Steelers, this week against the Cowboys, but I still think starting running backs don't happen very often. Go get them.
Yeah, you can't if you're going to get a guy that's going to start for an offense that loves to run. I mean, I know Matthew Stafford passes a lot, but they really do want to establish the run game. They ran it 30 times last week between Henderson and Freeman, and it was Henderson who had 39 snaps, so Freeman's 28. And what I find so interesting about that is Royce Freeman has been on this team, right? He's not active in every game, but he was active in prior games this year. He's been with the team, and instead of just going with him, instead of McVay just being like, we're going to go with Royce Freeman, they picked up Darrell Henderson off the street. He hasn't played in forever, and he instantly led the team in carries and snaps by a decent chunk. So I think this is Darrell Henderson's team moving forward until we get Kyren Williams back, and pretty much Royce Freeman will be fine if there's an injury to Henderson, which he does typically struggle to stay healthy. So I think both are fine. I think Royce Freeman's a fine stash, while Darrell Henderson's a fine play moving forward.
Yeah, I just be wary. As soon as we get attached to one Rams running back, things can just fall apart, but you have to just ride the hot hand, much like Sean McVay is doing right now with this Rams backfield as long as you can and get the production you're looking for. Now, we had a major injury. This player is managed in a lot of leagues here. It's Kareem Hunt. We had another injury to this backfield. Nick Chubb already down for the season. His early primary replacement, Jerome Ford, has a low high ankle sprain. Sounds like an oxymoron, but it'll keep him out for a few weeks here. So looking like a Kareem Hunt, Pierre Strong backfield. Hunt scored a couple times last week. The Seahawks matchup is manageable this week, but pretty much it's a Browns running back. I think you have to start him in most cases.
Yeah, I think if Kareem Hunt's out there, that's your top running back you want this week. Not only just because of Jerome Ford missing time, we don't know how long it'll be yet, but also he was producing with Jerome Ford, right? He was starting to take a lot more snaps, a lot more carries. He has 22 carries over the last 2 weeks. He has 3 rushing touchdowns. So all the rushing touchdowns were going to him. They have nice matchups, nice-ish matches against the Seahawks, and then a nice one against the Cardinals over the next 2 weeks. So I really want Kareem Hunt, and we have no idea what the quarterback situation is. So they're going to run a lot. So Kareem Hunt, if he's out there, he's got to be your pickup. And then Pierre Strong Jr., if Hunt's not out there, that is a guy that probably we'll see the increase in snaps and get some carries along with Hunt in this backfield.
Yeah, we'll mention a little bit more about him in our next tier of running back pickups to target, as well as wide receivers. There, our next segment. Quite a few more backup types that you can consider, and some guys coming back from injury or maybe having a bigger role if a veteran gets traded before the deadline next Tuesday. So a lot of things to look at there. We'll continue to look at the Week 8 waiver wire, but first we got to hear from a couple of our fine sponsors. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And we know your fantasy football team is a tight-knit unit. You got to get the right players in position there, and you're the guy or gal making all the decisions here. Well, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Yes, for free. It's easy to build a job there. Just add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that your company's hiring, and check that out across the board here. And simple tools such as screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small business rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. It's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football also brought to you by Prize Picks, and we know it's the easiest way to play daily fantasy sports there. All you have to do is look at 2 to 6 players and looking at the projections available for them on a given week. You go just pick more or less than those projections, and then you watch those winnings roll in. It's really fun to play, easy to get in on. You can make picks and click on them and have them good to go in just a matter of minutes here. So simple to play, and you can do that online, either with your computer or just conveniently with the Prize Picks app. So check it out. It's why it's the daily fantasy sports app go-to #1 now downloadable. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what all add up to making Prize Picks #1. You can also get weekly promotions that lead to big payouts. And check out Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. That's today. Prize Picks will discount select player projections. Now we have the NBA tipping off tonight, so we have that action as well for you beyond the NFL. So check it out there at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, and you'll get that first deposit match up to $100. Check it out. Prize Picks. You will never find an easier way to play daily fantasy sports. All right, Michelle, we will get into the next tier of running backs. So Pierre Strong, we talked about a little bit. He's the guy that is behind Kareem Hunt. So we'll see what kind of share he gets there in this matchup going forward. But one guy that reemerged, you might have dropped him after you picked him up, Emari Demarcardo. I can't believe we're talking about him again, but here we go. I don't know what happened. Keontae Ingram and Damian Williams, I guess they just messed with people in week 6. Demarcardo gets all the touches in week 7. I don't know if I want to attach all that much. This Cardinals offense starting to go into the tank with Josh Dobbs, and maybe why Kyler Murray is trying to get up to speed as quickly as possible. But yeah, if you're desperate for running back, I guess you could do a lot worse than Demarcardo.
I actually don't know if you could do any worse than Demarcardo, because he gets the Ravens and the Browns over the next 2 weeks. There's no world I want to play him. I mean, it would just be, I need a single body and I don't have a single other person and I need to plug in. Like, he got 13 carries last week. Woohoo. I don't know. Like, I don't want to play any running back against the Ravens or Browns, let alone Emari Demarcardo, when you don't even know what the usage is going to be like. So I say keep him on the waivers, or if you have him still, you never dropped him, try to sell him for any low-end wide receiver. Like, just get rid of him in any way possible.
Yeah, I guess if you got James Conner, you have nowhere else to turn. And that's what you have to look at here. And maybe you have Keontae Ingram and you went into that direction. You're trying to lock up the backup. That might be the only scenario where you go after him. But yeah, that's why he's a second-tier guy. Now, Roschon Johnson, I think, has a little bit more upside, of course, as a rookie. And it really just comes down to opportunity. We're not sure if Donta Foreman's performance was more a product of that matchup against the Raiders, and they still like Roschon, and they're not going to suddenly make Foreman the feature back. And I almost called him Foreman, just like Roschon. So maybe I just want Roschon to be back on the field because I was looking at Foreman's performance there against looking at him against the Raiders, and I was like, this should have been Roschon's points. This should have been his day, and Foreman stole it away. So I think what might actually help Roschon, he's a very good pass protector, and I don't think the Bears are going to have a lead when they go to the Chargers this week. So that's going to be great for his usage, I think, versus Foreman. Foreman's a front runner. When your team is winning, his results are good. When he's trailing, he's not that good. So I think they need Roschon pretty badly this week.
Yeah, if they're trailing, then Roschon's the guy. I will say, like, I think Roschon Johnson would have been so good these last 2 weeks if he were able to play as soon as Khalil Herbert was out and Deonta Foreman never got his chance to really take over that backfield. Now Foreman's going to take most of the carries like Khalil Herbert was doing, but Roschon should still be a viable option in this Chargers game if he's able to go. I mean, I don't know what's going on with this concussion. Has he been fully cleared yet? Is he ready to go? Longest
He's
concussion of all
trending in the
time.
right direction, which we need to see a little bit more. We need to see him on the practice field. I think if he gets a full practice in at some point during the week, they have to use him. It's the Bears. They need to find somebody, right? They're going to lean on the running game and the running backs a lot with Tyson Bagent set to make a start. Justin Fields has already been ruled out for this game. So, yeah, this is what you get on Sunday night. So enjoy, folks. Tyson Bagent versus the Chargers, two sub-500 teams. But it could be good for fantasy overall, as we mentioned with Josh Palmer and some of the other players in this game. Now, Jeff Wilson Jr., the usage was disappointing. It really was not even there. It didn't even register. Salvin Ahmed got a few handles there behind Raheem Mostert, but I don't know. Like, they liked him last year, but that was last year, right? They could be just buying time, waiting for Devon Echan to come back here and play with Raheem Mostert. But I think you get Wilson, but it's more so that I would keep him as a stash because Mostert is older and injury prone. He could go down, then you won't have a Chan. They're going to go back to Wilson. So I think that's more how I'd approach JWJ.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play him yet. I'm not shocked by his 7 snaps last week. He
Yeah.
came back after a long absence. He was banged up even in the preseason, I believe, as well. So they're going to bring him back slowly. I think his snaps will go up this week. Still don't want to play him. And then maybe the week after that, they'll increase. But yeah, Devin Achane should be coming back soon as well. And then I don't really want anything to do with Jeff Wilson Jr. unless Raheem Mostert gets hurt. So among these groups, I really think these group of guys, it's Pierre Strong Jr., Roschon Johnson. Those are the two I'm looking to pick up as like second tier running backs. I'm not like dying to play, but I think you can play them this week. I don't want to play Emari Demarcardo. I don't want to play Jeff Wilson Jr. And then Jaylen Warren might be out there. People might be somewhat enticed to pick him up with that rushing touchdown last week. In a full PPR league, you might get 10 points. That's pretty much your ceiling with him. That's all he scored last week in PPR was 10 points, and he scored a touchdown. So he doesn't excite me.
Yeah, he's pretty much the complimentary back, and that's not going to change. Everyone wants him to take over versus Najee Harris, but that's not how the Steelers perceive him. I think they like him as that change of pace to Najee Harris because if he's out there a lot, he's a smallish guy. I think he would get crushed a little bit if he got.
Yeah, I mean, that's his role he shines in. He's not a good, like, in between the tackles running back. He shines when he can get to the outside, get some space, or they utilize him sometimes in the passing game. He can't do, I mean, I'm not saying Najee looks good or anything, but he can't do what Najee can do.
No, and keep in mind, I mean, even Tony Pollard, right? I mean, he was this type of back, and then now he's got a full workload. It hasn't been as effective, right? When he's had to been forced into more workload because then he slows down, right? You're not going to have that same burst you have. And there's only one guy that can play all the snaps with the hurt rib and oblique and still look fast at the end of the game. That's Christian McCaffrey. Everyone else was just catching up. Now, speaking of fast, Ty J. Spears, we'll see. Will the youth movement kick in with the Titans after the bye? That's what we need to see. Is Malik Willis or Will Levis going to start? Are they going to look at more of their young players? Will Treylon Burks return? Okonkwo, are they going to use him? So that would say Ty J. Spears is right in with that. Will they trade Derrick Henry? That's another thing they could think about. I think it's a bit of a long shot to move Henry, but not out of the realm of possibility here. So Ty J. Spears has had some independent value. I think this is the last call for him beyond being him Henry handcuff.
I think the Browns should trade for Derrick Henry. I wouldn't like to see it as a Steelers fan, but I think that'd be sick to have him this year for the rest of the year because you don't have Nick Chubb. And then next year, if Nick Chubb does come back, when he comes back, if you had both of those guys and they're splitting work, like defenses would just like struggle so bad to stay alive by the end of the game, trying to stop both of them. I think it sounds interesting, and they should trade him. But we're coming close to the deadline here, so we'll see. Moving on to wide receivers in the second tier, not a ton of guys, really just focusing on those first tier guys we brought up. But Curtis Samuel, another guy, last week wasn't great, right, against the Giants, but he had 8 targets, just only 25 receiving yards. I think he's a viable flex play. He gets the Eagles this week. He had 18 points against them in PPR leagues in week 4. I think he's a viable flex play, just not an exciting one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like I don't know what you're going to get. Really, Sam Howell's week to week, and he's kind of gone the opposite direction here. So we just hope that Samuel comes through with those targets, and he's going to keep getting those targets because Sam Howell cannot push the ball downfield. Facing all that pressure, he needs to throw closer, shorter to the line of scrimmage to Samuel and Logan Thomas a lot. So that won't really change. Now, Marvin Mims is another one of those guys tied to the trade deadline, right? I mean, he didn't do much of anything last week. He actually had Michelle negative fantasy points because he ran backwards and lost 11 yards on a play. So this is what Sean Payton's idea of using Marvin Mims more. So Cortland Sutton's on the block, Jerry Jeudy's on the block. They need to move one of these guys, and then Marvin Mims is going to be the starting lineup or Brandon Johnson. But they already used kind of Brandon Johnson as the third guy at 11 personnel. So if they bring in Mims, you should get some opportunities. I think ideally Jeudy will be moved because then Mims can work the slot. He can play off Sutton and all that good stuff. So I think he's a guy you definitely stash for the rookie upside.
Yeah, I think the Broncos are desperately wanting to trade away Jerry Jeudy. It's just about finding a trade partner that's willing to trade anything worthwhile for him. It's just Sean Payton's so funny, being like, the Marvin Mims utilization is going to go up. It's going to go up 18 snaps. It didn't go up at all. 1 target. Like, they just don't want to use him. I don't know why, but he's not playable at all until Jerry Jeudy's traded, and then we also see his workload. Like I also don't want to just plug him in as soon as Jerry. I do think Jerry Jeudy will be traded if they can get anything, and then Marvin Mims becomes a guy that you'll be happy to have on your bench just to see what happens. But yeah, it's all up in the air right now. And then another rookie wide receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, he had a solid game with DK Metcalf out. So did Jake Bobo. They both had good games with DK Metcalf out of the lineup. Now, I would expect him to be back since he was a game time decision last week. And it's interesting, Bobo actually played more snaps than JSN last week, but they both got the touchdown, both got 4 receptions, 60 yards.
Yeah, what happened here is they pretty much pivoted to Jake Bobo in the kind of DK Metcalf role. But what we did not foresee is that Jackson Smith-Njigba would kind of see more run than Tyler Lockett. So maybe it's just a sign that they're fading and phasing out Tyler Lockett here. I mean, he's a little bit older. He's got to slow down at some point. He's played a lot as a return man and receiver. I think you're seeing that a little bit. He's only had one really explosive game this year. So maybe mixing it up. We'll see if that hip injury looms here for Metcalf. That said, I do not love this matchup this week against the Browns. So that's probably not great for either to play, but we definitely watch the targets increasing for JSN, especially here should this linger, because we know with Metcalf, it can keep him out for a while. So something to watch there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And our last segment, we'll be getting to quarterbacks and tight ends that you can stream this week, as well as some defenses we like that you can grab off the waivers to play this week. But before that, we have to hear from another one of our sponsors. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you are set. And tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, just create an account by downloading the Game Time app, and you can redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Vinny, let's get into these quarterback and tight ends and defense you might be looking to pick up this week if you need a 1-week fill-in. Now, there are no teams on bye. So unless you're dealing with injuries, you should have all of your starters. But still, there's some quarterbacks and tight ends to mention here. First, right off the bat, I feel like Gardner Minshew would be the top quarterback to stream this week of the viable options. He gets the Saints. He had the 2 rushing touchdowns last week. I don't think that happens again. But then he also, he's willing just to throw up that ball. He just plays like backyard football.
Yeah, I think my only concern is he had a little bit of low volume, right? Last week, it was kind of crazy that he had those 4 scores, right? With very limited. He had some big plays and rushing touchdowns. So, but it was against the Browns. So that's the encouraging thing, right? It's the hardest matchup, and he came through, and he's back at home. So that's good. And I think another thing that helps is I think this is a very good matchup for Derek Carr and the Saints passing game. So that's going to maybe cause a little bit of high scoring here, maybe going back and forth. I think the Saints defense is a pretty tough challenge here for Minshew. I'm not sure I would go nuts about it here. I think in Superflex, I think both these guys are definitely viable this week with some of those lower tier guys disappointing, such as Smith. So I think you look at that potential here with this game, and the secondary of the Colts, not very good. We saw it. They didn't give up the points last week to PJ Walker, but there were a lot of mistakes made by that secondary. And this team, if Chris Olave doesn't drive too fast, he'll be in this game. Like a rest, unfortunately for him, doing what basically everyone has done before. So hopefully he'll be good to go with his game and look at the Colts secondary as something to attack. So that's where I see the path to Derek Carr. Now I think on the lower end, Michelle, when I'm going to say this lower end, Mac Jones and Kenny Pickett did play well last week, and they are facing some teams that could light up their defenses this week. So watch out. There could be some garbage time opportunities here for Mac Jones and Kenny Pickett. I don't love those two, but if you're desperate in a very deep league or you're doing a little bit of a DFS pivot, I would not be too scared to play either one of those guys because, look, the matchups are okay and good enough to go with.
Maybe Mac Jones, but if you play Kenny Pickett or if you play him in DFS, you're just throwing your money away. I'm telling you right now. And Derek Carr, basically, I think Kenny Pickett would be the only quarterback I wouldn't want to play over Derek Carr. Like I just never would want to play Derek Carr. He has no upside. And he
I'm
has
really
no
making you happy this week. Bringing up here.
Derek Carr and Kenny Pickett are just no-goes. I will say check for CJ Stroud. He had a bye last week. Maybe people had to drop him, but gets the Panthers. And the Panthers started off being pretty good against fantasy quarterbacks, but over their last 2 games, allowed a lot to Jared Goff and a lot to Tua. So I think CJ Stroud has been nothing but really solid for fantasy. I would rather play him over Gardner, definitely over Derek Carr and over Kenny Pickett. And then Dak Prescott, he was disappointing for a while. He had the big week 6, so maybe people held on to him throughout the bye, but maybe people dropped him. I'd be willing to pick him up as well and start him against the Rams. He'll probably, once I'm done with my rankings, he'll probably be around quarterback 10 to 12. So it's not like I'm super high on him, but he's definitely a viable option this week.
Yeah, I think Stroud and Prescott actually are going to be definitely startable this week. And look, if someone dropped them, that's their fault. I think they have favorable opportunities going forward. I think you'll see both of them produce better. So this is a good week to do that. Prescott at home against the Rams and Stroud on the road against the Panthers defense. It's falling apart. The secondary.
I will say I had to drop Stroud in a league, and it was very hard, but because there was only a 5 bench league, and I had Justin Fields still as doubtful. So I couldn't put him on my IR, and I had to pick up another quarterback because Stroud was on bye, so I couldn't be rostering 3 quarterbacks with 5 bench players only. I was going to have to drop someone good. So teams may have had to drop these guys, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. So now I got to go fight for Stroud again on waivers, and that might be happening elsewhere. Just go check it out. And then for tight ends, some good options right now because Dalton Kincaid could have definitely been dropped in like redraft leagues. He wasn't doing anything this year. And then has his breakout game in week 7. Dawson Knox is undergoing wrist surgery, so he's going to miss time. I mean, that opens up a lot of opportunities for Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, so we started with 2 Joshes at wide receiver, ending with 2 Daltons at tight end. It's really weird. But when you look at, Schultz should not be out there. I mean, he's feeling a little bit more. We'll see about Tank Dell and see if his concussion lingers. I think he should be okay, but I still think there's a rapport that's developing between Schultz, and Stroud, which is great, behind Nico Collins. And plus, regardless, it's Dell, Collins, and Schultz pretty much are the three targets there. And Kincaid, same situation, right? He's a rookie, but the opportunity had to come. Knox is hurt. They're really struggling to find a third option behind Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Khalil Shakir is not cutting it. No one else is. So it all lines up well. He led the team in receiving last week, steps into an okay spot this week. So all kinds of things are lining up for Kincaid. So I think not only Kincaid, Schultz, pick him up, but to plug him in your lineup, as well as, yes, I hate to say it, Taysom Hill, he's back. And part of this, Michelle, is they know that Derek Carr is bad. So they need Taysom Hill in the red zone. They need a power back to help Alvin Kamara because they don't even like Jamal Williams anymore, Kendra Miller. So they're like, let's give the ball to Taysom Hill. He's our best goal line creator. He's a pretty good receiver. I'm really surprised how he's running routes, and the opportunities opened up with Juwan Johnson being out. So look, tight end is bad between the top 8, 9. I think Dalton Kincaid, Dalton Schultz, Taysom Hill, plug them in and go forward with there. So I think that's really nice that you can get 3 potential starters out of the waiver wire this week.
Honestly, like Taysom Hill, the thing with him last year where the inconsistency is because he wasn't getting targets at all, right? It would just come down to if he got the rushing touchdowns. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, he's being utilized a lot in the passing game. If he's going to get that with some passing work, with some rushing work, he then becomes a pretty safe tight end as long as Juwan Jennings is out, or Juwan Johnson is out. And then, between Dalton Schultz and Kincaid, I think Kincaid has the higher ceiling, but Dalton Schultz has been doing it. I will say all of his targets did end up coming as soon as Tank Dell suffered the concussion. So we'll see if he ends up still keeping those targets with Dell back, but definitely something to monitor. And I think you can play him this week. But I would prefer Hill, Kincaid, and then Schultz there. And then for defenses, we actually have some solid matchups where you can grab defenses off the waivers. Texans versus Panthers, really love that. Falcons versus Titans, if they're playing Malik Willis out there, and then maybe the Chargers against the Bears, even though Tyson Bagent looked pretty solid. But those are some options. And if the Lions are out there, of course, against the Raiders would be a good option as well.
Yeah, some people may have dropped the Lions because of their atrocious defensive performance in Baltimore, but the Raiders are not Baltimore. Don't forget in the game, the Chargers, it's a road game at night for Tyson Bagent, so that helps. And Khalil Mack revenge game. Don't forget about that. He blew up last time when he attacked such a quarterback in Aiden O'Connell. And then, look, you can play the Falcons, but you can also play the Titans. They are going to know Arthur Smith's tendencies. So I think there's going to be some turnovers on both sides of that game. It could be the ugliest game of the week with Desmond Ridder against Malik Willis / Ryan Tannehill / Will Levis, whoever it is at quarterback. So definitely some strong streaming options always available for you to help you and plug and play as starters. So pretty good look at the waiver wire this week. Michelle, we will get into our running back and quarterback rankings. We'll flip the script looking at the games for this week coming up on tomorrow's show. Thanks for making us your first listen every dayers. We'll have those rankings. Plus, we'll look at the wide receiver and tight end on Thursday. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.